People strive for enlightenment, which means freely allowing light to pass through. Since this light does not pass freely, they lack the strength to solve their own problems. They can't solve their own problems, and they can't solve global issues either. And because of this lack of light in the world, there are wars, cataclysms, epidemics, and conflicts. This is simply due to an insufficiency of inner strength, preventing the collective consciousness from turning against itself or fostering mutual hatred, and instead allowing it to live in harmony with mutual respect and so forth. And all of this is one huge organism called Earth, which simply lacks this energy. Now, what did we start with? We said that today we will talk about the principles that will empower you to initiate your inner quest and accelerate it in such a way that will allow this vital light to pass through. Light possesses the profound ability to resolve all problems. You might want to consider making a note of this fundamental truth. So this is that will allow you to initiate an inner search, to accelerate it in such a way that you can begin to let this light through, first and foremost. If you don't have enough light in your life, by which I mean this essential life force energy, then you're going to encounter many issues, particularly in your relationships, your finances, and your work. It means your attention is lacking somewhere, that this light is missing somewhere. And so you need to extend that energy, that light of consciousness, into that space, allowing it to flow through. First, we will grasp the fundamental principles of precisely how it works. Now let's define the space we're in. Well, let's just call it space for simplicity. We'll make an arbitrary division, although, of course, it doesn't actually divide that way. It's a very rough conceptual separation. It's just that some things that are inexplicable to the mind need to be explained somehow. Therefore, we make a very arbitrary distinction about the external space, even though, in reality, everything is actually interconnected and unified. And internal. This is the internal space. And what is it that typically takes place within our external space? So, we have these points of focus for our attention. Let's just use triangles as a simple way to denote them. This is our work, our family, some household tasks, various so-called problems, like having to earn money, and so on. Meaning, something is always happening in the external space. And typically, for the average person, attention functions in the following manner. It singles out an external object from its surroundings that demands immediate focus. For example, I'm experiencing a financial deficit, which compels me to work diligently. Consequently, my full attention is dedicated to my job, including the stress associated with it and the continuous effort to complete tasks. And our attention, just snatches this object with a beam. The same applies to our everyday existence. We're always extracting elements from our environment. For example, while driving, our attention continuously seizes upon various objects. Since the power of focus is absent, there isn't any. Do you recall? We just conversed about this. Why do problems surface? Why can't we simply awaken and perceive ourselves as this vast expanse? It's due to a lack of that power of focus. Insufficient light is present, and thus our attention simply darts about. It usually jumps between one object, a second, a third, a fourth, like a restless mind. We struggle to maintain focus on a single object for an extended period, as our power of focus is insufficient. And often for a person it doesn't even come as a beam like that, like I'm aware that I'm directing my attention to something. Instead, we're so focused on something that we're right here, completely immersed in this very picture. A great example of this is any computer game. You know how kids or teenagers play, or when you watch a TV series, it's like the body is completely gone, everything's lost. You're totally inside that picture. Similarly, we can get so completely stuck in something that we forget about ourselves entirely and exist purely in that external space. And typically, when an individual tries to focus on one thing, another aspect of their life tends to fall apart. And so, since we lack strength, we keep shifting and shifting between external objects. But that's only half the problem, because a person also has what? An internal space. And within this space, there are also various elements, let's refer to them as such. Because that's our thoughts, our emotions, our fears, our mental patterns, our desires, our behavioral habits. This means that our minds are constantly preoccupied with concerns about the future and lingering regrets about the past. And sometimes they even help to form the picture of our perception. So in fact, if we consult neurophysiologists, what would we hear from them? They tell us that when an image strikes the retina of your eye, it travels along the nerve endings and directly into the brain. And then the brain reconstructs reality for us, utilizing specific regions, those neural networks in the brain that are responsible for imagination and for memory. So essentially, we are living in a simulated reality. In other words, the brain simulates and reconstructs reality, and typically it does so from its own inherent beliefs and its own established patterns from what has already formed in your mind in a certain way. And your attention often gets trapped, not only by what's externally visible, but as a general rule, it also frequently becomes fixated on the internal picture. So attention spins around here, this energy circulates, and a huge amount of it, this light, gets spent on inner turmoil. What will people think of me? But what would happen if I were to decide to switch my work? And what if I speak my mind? How will others react to me? And these fears, along with all these insecurities, they consume this light, preventing it from flowing freely. From where does this light come? This light, it comes from, well, for lack of a better way to put it, I initially wanted to draw an eye, but I'm not particularly good at sketching eyes. So let's just say it's a general source of some kind. It feels rather peculiar to sketch something on paper that has always existed eternally and boundlessly, depicting it as a peculiar small eye. However, it's necessary to illustrate it somehow, and so this is the representation. We can for now call it consciousness. Consciousness. And there is individual consciousness. Individual, that's yours, and it can be called by different terms. Spirit, for example, which accumulates experience. And then there is the boundless, limitless consciousness. Well, I won't abbreviate to save time. So our individual consciousness, in a way, is connected to this boundless field, within which nothing has ever taken place, nothing has ever come to pass. It has always existed and will continue to exist eternally. There's nothing that can be said about it since it is truly eternal and infinite. And the mind just can't imagine it, let alone try to draw it out, however imperfectly, on a piece of paper. This is what can be said about God, right? It's metaphysics. And so our individual consciousness is intrinsically connected with this. And from this deep connection, this radiant light comes forth. So let's say if you group external objects into a single field, what you get is a kind of spotlight. A kind of spotlight of this attention. So just imagine, many people complain about a lack of money, relationship problems, health issues. All of these exist in the external space. Just imagine this light should pass through without obstruction. An enlightened individual freely radiates this light in order to resolve all the challenges that exist in the world and in your own life. And it runs up against your fears, your insecurities, your ideas about how things should be, about what the present moment should look like, or about who I am supposed to be. And all of these elements distort it, block its flow, and ultimately refract it into a perceived image that, more often than not, turns out to be quite unappealing to us. And we say, "Oh Lord, I just don't want to see this, and I don't want to live like this." And that is when one's own internal search process truly begins to activate. Let's go over this again, just to recap this topic. When a person lives an ordinary life, they don't think about needing to suddenly awaken or achieve enlightenment. However, a maturation process takes place when experience begins to accumulate and build up within an individual's mind and mental framework. Roughly speaking, a kind of ripening occurs. The person's ego cocoon has formed. Their ideas about themselves and the world have become so dense, this egoism has solidified to the point that it no longer allows the light of consciousness to pass into the external space. And this ultimately leads to suffering, meaning it begins to weigh heavily on the individual. At first, there's a sense of discomfort, maybe an inner emptiness, certain fears. If a person doesn't begin that active search, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? If they don't seek this knowledge, if they don't seek this experience, then typically something in their external world, in their life, will start to push back. Their finances start to crumble, or their health, or scandals begin to erupt somewhere. Meaning something starts to happen simply because there's a shortage of this energy, a lack of light. And it's all very simple. It's all very simple. The only thing that needs to be done at the first stage is to direct your attention toward that source. But how do you do that? An ordinary person would probably say, "What is this, Sergey? You've drawn some gibberish for us on this paper, and you're telling us to focus our attention to who knows where and to find who knows what." You know, like in a Russian fairy tale, which, by the way, you could say is about awakening, right? Go there, I don't know where, find that, I don't know what. So how do you actually do that? However, when you actively seek, you find yourself tuning into broadcasts just like these. And it is quite reasonable to say that there's a specific methodology and tools that allow for this inner search, ways to direct your attention toward your own consciousness, toward the source of that inner light that flows. It's actually very simple. To begin, just direct your attention. Let's say I'll draw it here as a little heart. In essence, you can direct your attention into the body. But why begin with the heart first? Because if you try to direct your attention to your body, it often presents quite a challenge, particularly for individuals who are just starting this practice. Your attention jumps between external objects and internal worries. And it is unclear if it's staying within the body or if it's not. During today's practice, some of you may have noticed your attention sinking into your body, only to quickly dart away into your thoughts, then sinking back in and immediately flying off again. This constant returning of attention to the body is a skill that demands consistent practice, a true training of your focus. So to begin, for those who haven't practiced this at all, and for whom this is new information, you can start your training by directing your attention to your heart. Right now, to everyone listening. Direct part of your attention to your heart. Well, to the heart center, somewhere in the chest area. And you might discover that all of a sudden there's a sensation, perhaps a burning feeling, maybe some pressure, a wave of heat, or something entirely new that you just hadn't noticed before, as if it was never there to begin with. But in reality, it had always been present. You simply weren't focusing your attention on it. And if you manage to sit quietly for a short while, without being distracted by what I am saying, and for those watching the recorded session, if you pause the video and observe, even for a brief moment, the inherent rhythm of your heart's inner life, you will suddenly discover that you, the one who observes, exists beyond both the inner and outer spaces. This means you will discover that the observation, you as the witness, yes, the witness of what is occurring, you are like a witness or an observer. So this means you're situated somewhere within this particular area, somewhere that is beyond the limits of your own internal structure, and the thing that you are observing that exists within the body itself. Eventually, once you've practiced, you will be able to simply project your attention directly into the body. In our practices, since we have experienced instructors who can immediately identify mistakes for those not training from recordings, we prepare those who come to our courses and retreats to instantly shift their attention fully into the body, because we can provide immediate feedback. What a person is getting right and what they're not. There are a lot of nuances there, but to start, the first step is to direct your attention to your heart. Once you've consistently trained yourself to steadily hold your focus there, you can then direct your attention right into your body and discover that you are the observer, that you are the witness to what is happening around you. Then, everything that unfolds both outside and inside you becomes clear. You witness everything that unfolds within your inner and outer objects, and simultaneously, a portion of your awareness stays anchored within your physical form. But this is also a kind of crutch. It's just the first step. Later on, as you develop the skill of holding your attention in witnessing what's happening, observing everything that unfolds, you realize you don't need that crutch anymore. Your attention your point of assemblage has shifted, and this is precisely what's known as the primary awakening. As our enlightened teacher, our teacher Gennady says, this is a barrier. This is merely the starting point. It is when you fully recognize yourself as this inner space, not external images you depend upon, nor your internal beliefs about who you are, But this observation, you've entered this observation, you're aware of everything happening inside and out, and you are witnessing it all. You have awakened, as it were, from everything that was happening, from being completely absorbed in your own worries and concerns. And this is merely a barrier. So you've awakened. Let's reiterate this principle once more so that it is absolutely clear and understood. When you are in the act of witnessing what is happening, essentially, as the observer, you are already allowing more of this light to pass through you. Therefore, for you, the observer, it begins to bring to light all your personal fears and complexes, making them visible. You can step off this barrier, you can simply observe it, and in doing so, you don't have to suffer from it. You are free in your choices and decisions, which means that this space has no need to educate or discipline you. This means there's no necessity for the external world to intensify pressure on you simply to compel you to focus your attention here. In other words, as soon as you consciously begin to train your attention in the body and shift into the observer's point of view, you activate such an amount of light that it illuminates all your inner limitations, and you have the ability to step over and beyond them. Now we move to the second stage of our discussion. For those of you watching the recorded version, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And for those of you who are currently on the air, please write in the chat because the next segment is coming up. Because just look, this is how it works. Well, I'll try to draw a little eye again. Some sort of a triangular one, apparently. Someone possesses this light of consciousness. You see, it means that the light of consciousness passes through freely. And suddenly it highlights some fear in your mind. For example, the fear of, I'm the smartest one. Consequently, if you hold on to the notion, I am the smartest one, what exactly does that reflect in the external space? In the external space, you'll encounter people who can be arbitrarily labeled as fools. So if you think you're the smartest, then in your life you'll constantly be surrounded by some inadequate or, well, a bit strange people. Why? Because you have that kind of pattern, that belief. So when you're in this mindset, your focus is, I'm the smartest. Ugh, they're nothing but fools. You're essentially projecting this image outward. That's the clear connection right there. If you are right here, you see it, you are not dependent on it. And this right here disappears. There's no need for the space to project it. This is what's known as the purification process. Imagine this. For those people who are truly ready to walk the path of awakening and full self-realization, they must understand that meeting their fears and beliefs about who they are comes with the necessity of disidentifying from them. You need to break free from them, and that is a purification process. It can also be a painful process if you cling to them. However, there is a solution to this issue. Just imagine, you find yourself alone in a big city, seated within your apartment, making an effort to disidentify from all your hang-ups and personal challenges. But this is something that can be worked through. Some enlightened teachers now offer satsangs online stating, well, I simply disidentified myself from that and that was all there was to it. And then when you watch their interviews or their stories, some I spoke with in great detail. It turns out they suffered for 15, 20 years, lying on the couch, having lost everything. Loans, debts, apartments, cars, everything. Their wife left, everything. Their life completely collapsed. Everything was destroyed. And only then did the light begin to flow freely. Not many of us would be willing to undertake this kind of journey at this point. Therefore, for the cleansing process of these patterns to proceed more harmoniously and smoothly, and for conflicts in the world, as well as natural disasters and other various disturbances, to generally cease. Along with epidemics, nothing affected this picture, and externally it disappeared. That means much more light is needed. Therefore, hypothetically, if we illustrate the individual consciousness, this spirit, right, the individual one. But of course my drawing skills are so-so, my little eyes look more like paramecia. There. But even back at the beginning of the 20th century, Tsiolkovsky said that synergy multiplies by 7 times. Right? When you direct your attention together, the 2 of you, 3 of you, when you focus your attention, you amplify this light many times over because all of this It's part of a single unified field of consciousness, reaching out into the infinite. It is something that cannot be fully expressed or visualized, especially not on a mere sheet of paper. It is all one single indivisible field of consciousness that transmits this energy through every eye throughout the entire world. Our sole responsibility, if we are to do this collaboratively. So why do we, for example, choose to conduct group retreats instead of individual sessions? Or in our method, when someone is just starting out, we tell them, direct your attention into your body. They reply, okay, but I notice so much in there. We then say, that's excellent. After that, you need to begin, together with like-minded people, to transmit this light into the world, what we call service. So what is service, really? It's not about running around trying to force good onto everyone. Hence, service is simply the clear transmission of this light, this very loving attention. This love originates right here from the source. The love of this consciousness, along with its loving attention, significantly amplifies and strengthens when you engage in this activity together. And that is why we strongly encourage you to gather with others, engage in practices together, and collaboratively work on projects. In this way, you start to alter the external image, making it simpler for you to liberate yourself from your personal complexes, behavioral patterns, and mental templates that prevent the light to pass through. And each of us is destined to walk this path regardless. Whether we want it or not, the truth is that the light will come through regardless. It's moving forward no matter what. Consciousness does not care whether you want it to or not. It continues its flow regardless. It's a different story, however, if you resist and fail to shift your attention towards this divine source, towards this light. Then it starts to apply pressure, including through external circumstances. If you begin to move towards it, then that's it. You've got it. It's as if you're a mature person, an adult who no longer needs to be taught or corrected. You begin to let the light flow through you harmoniously and live freely and joyfully in this world. Now let's turn our attention to the questions, but first just one more thing. Everything I have just discussed can be concisely summarized in this manner. If we want to solve all the problems in our lives and all the problems in the world, light solves it all. Our task as channels is simply to bring this light into dense reality. How do we do that? The first step is to train our attention, beginning with being here and now, in presence. That's when the light flows more harmoniously and freely. To do this, direct your attention into the body. There are techniques for this that we teach. But this is just the first step, as it starts the cleansing process that washes away the layers of egoism and consumerism inside you, all those beliefs about everything. And for that to happen, you need like-minded individuals, buddies who can provide support and enhance the conductivity of this light. And naturally, if nobody's there to explain it, help you out, tell you about it, or train you essentially, if you don't have a guide doing this for you, then it's quite likely you might get lost along the way and end up spending years on it. Our enlightened teacher passes this knowledge on to us. We share it with you, continuing what we've been talking about. You see, after you've begun your search, after you've realized that consumption and the external world feel suffocating, and you sense some inner emptiness or discomfort, you come to understand that there is something greater. You want to awaken to the fact that consciousness exists and that it is eternal and infinite, and you simply want to endlessly transmit this loving awareness into this space through your avatar. And so you begin this search, and you receive some meditation techniques, ways to direct your attention into the body. Then you're told that's not sufficient. You also need to engage in service with other individuals. And this is where the ego usually presents resistance. What exactly am I supposed to do? Why should I serve? For what purpose? How does this even function? Synergy. What exactly does that mean? Do I truly believe in this or not? So this, a mental cocoon begins to wrap itself around this. And here, I really want to give you a great deal of encouragement. Let's explore why our team establishes retreat centers across the globe and the mechanisms by which this operates. So if we were to sketch a simple hypothetical image in a two-dimensional reality, each one of us, each point of our attention, is like this little red circle. It exists in this field of unified consciousness, this energy field that surrounds us, that we are in and that we are made of. But let's just illustrate it in a simplified way for the mind, that we enter into it to some extent. That is, we press into it, roughly speaking, we immerse ourselves in it. To what extent do we resonate with our pure, focused attention? That is, how much of my loving attention is truly loving? Am I broadcasting feelings of irritation or perhaps anger, or could it be bewilderment or even fright? So whatever I project into this world is how deeply I immerse myself in it. Each person, regardless of how much effort they put in, possesses a unique and personal capacity for this deep immersion. And now, what exactly happens when all of us come together and do this? So I've sketched this out here if it looks like some kind of funnel, right? So this is some sort of field, right, of unified consciousness, this energy. And the circles of this attention has gathered here in the center. So it's like they're on a trampoline, they've concentrated all their efforts like eggs in one basket, and with the combined force of their efforts, they've really pushed through. That is, broadly speaking, an immersion into this space, into the purer layers of consciousness. So here, for example, is a pure level of consciousness, right? Pure, then further on are the levels, layers of consciousness, divine, unified, and the absolute. So there's a sort of tentative gradation, but it does exist. And collectively, through our combined efforts, we immerse ourselves a bit more deeply than any one of us could on our own. Now, what happens when you decide to join a group or team that has already attained a significant depth of perception regarding life, meaning they are already vibrating at a somewhat distinct frequency? This means you do not have to undertake the arduous effort on your own, an endeavor that these individuals, who have dedicated years of their lives to it, have already completed. Now you have the opportunity to do it many times faster, in months, and for some, in weeks. It truly depends entirely on you, on your specific intentions, and precisely how much you genuinely wish to project and manifest this particular energy. And if you choose to join, you will, in essence, begin to immerse yourself in this space, advancing in a spiraling fashion, to enter and progress significantly faster. It's as though you are delving into the subtle levels of perception, thanks to the combined efforts already invested by others. And we call this the Paradentha field. So simply put, our team, as a group of people who have set the Absolute as their goal, has a certain depth of immersion and a specific quality that, for example, some monastery somewhere in Tibet, they may possess an identical depth of immersion, but they have their unique particularities, their own Paradentha field. We refer to the field we create in this way because although they might be at the same depth, for instance, they have their own language, culture, mentality, understanding, and traditions. Consequently, they approach it a bit differently, reflecting their individuality. And so, the distinct individuality of our immersion, that's what we call it. And so, when you, through your intention, aim to provide assistance to the Paradentha field, that is to help with this immersion into the Absolute. Meaning, I want to be a part of this, I want to channel my, energy through myself into this cause, then you just go straight here like this, and that's it. And that's it. This light goes through you, and everything that would usually take you years to cleanse all your hang-ups, all your fears, all your complexes, you end up saving an enormous amount of time, strength, energy, and suffering due to this light simply flowing through you. This means that immersion is self-sustaining because you connect to this field without placing any barriers between yourself and it. The immersion happens naturally because you simply connect to this field without, placing any kind of barrier between yourself and it. After all, everything is one absolute, one unified field of consciousness. The only thing separating us is the distinction of I versus he. It's essentially just I. If you then claim that, and so this is us, this is kind of how it works. Part of me, you already belong, and the separation wall vanishes. And consequently, all the various states, all the different kinds of your blockages and emotional hang-ups that are currently rising up. For some, it might feel comfortable, and they thoroughly enjoyed the practice, while for others, it may have caused irritation. All of this, as was mentioned just now, truly represents the present moment, and it is simply what it is. And through you, This energy flows, sometimes uplifting, sometimes bringing sadness, and sometimes irritation. All of this is cleansed by this energy. And all of this should be approached with joy, gratitude, and ease, for this is your path to the source. The only thing that can truly accelerate its progress is your profound intention, your heartfelt desire, and your unwavering aspiration to transmit your loving attention into this world. Perhaps there are questions. I see a lot of chat activity. How to let light pass? Perhaps I explained it confusingly, but again, light flows on its own. It flows no matter what. And for you to let it pass through freely, you need to be here and now, when your attention is located elsewhere, on external objects or perhaps within your inner experiences, you block it off. It's as if you're putting a lid on your own pot and you're just stewing there in your inner world. Energy cannot flow through in such a state. So for the light to pass through, you need to be here and now, in the moment. What is always in the present moment? Our body is always in the present moment. It's always here and now. Something is always happening within it, you just don't seem to notice. Direct your attention into the body. To start, if anyone doesn't know how to do this, as I said, direct it to the center of your chest. That's it. As soon as you direct your attention there, you are training. And after that, you will discover that you, as the one directing the attention, are not really here at all, but are witnessing what is happening. Your attention is here. But you are a witness to all that is unfolding. And everything that's unfolding, your thoughts, your emotions, your fears, your sensations, the sounds around you, the sights around you, all of that is observed as one unified single space. And then when you fixate on observation, it's as if you think, wait, it's always been like this. What do you mean? That's why it's called an awakening, because you wake up and think, wait, how could it have been any other way? It even seems strange that I couldn't direct my attention into the body before, or it's peculiar that I hadn't perceived all of this previously. And it becomes quite absurd to even try to explain, because it feels as though it was always with you, yet you simply hadn't noticed it before. So what exactly is full realization? What is its ultimate limit? Good question, an excellent one. Let's talk about it. Look, since we have to name things. So what is full realization and what are its limits? Since we have to describe it with certain terms, we might refer to it as full realization or enlightenment or a profound awakening or transcending the matrix or a deep connection to the source, a connection to the absolute. So essentially, these are all just words that create a particular impression in a person's mind, a certain concept of what it is, but by and large, words can't really describe it. The one thing that becomes clear to an individual is that I can no longer continue living in the way that I have been. I mean, it feels like I don't even have the strength for my own personal life anymore. I don't have the strength to cope with the inner emptiness. So a certain search is initiated, and a person begins to seek, they begin to search, and they come across knowledge, they come across methods. They are different, but in their essence they are one. They lead you to initiate and intensify the inner search, the aspiration to transcend with your attention to places you're unfamiliar with. However, we specifically offer a meditation that allows not just as people usually do, when they meditate by focusing on the breath. But instead, you transcend into the unknown, going beyond all existing ideas and limitations. And in this way, you shift your point of assembly further and further towards the source. And ultimately, you fully realize your potential. So, roughly speaking, the idea of creation is for you to become a creator. Moreover, to surpass the Creator. How does our teacher, our enlightened teacher who has achieved full realization, answer us? He replies in this manner when we ask, Gennady, what exists out there beyond? And he says, guys, well, what sort of a difference does it make what a professor explains to a little kid in kindergarten? So Can a 3-year-old toddler who is simply playing in the sandbox, sifting sand with his molds, genuinely understand what his grandfather, the academic, does at the Academy of Sciences? He probably can. But Grandpa goes somewhere, puts on a suit, and talks to people. That's most likely all he can communicate about it. And it's exactly the same for us. We can only speak about what is pertinent to us at this very moment, and that is what's relevant to us now, is about channeling this life energy into existence. And for the most part, in order to carry it out as harmoniously and as quickly as possible, only 2 actions are needed. The first is to be in the here and now. And for this we train by directing our attention into the body during our primary practice. And second is to transmit this light, meaning to consistently radiate your loving and reverent attention and to constantly transmit that powerful energy into the world. That truly is service. So it's this step, meditation, service, and they truly complement and harmonize one another. It's like 2 legs moving along the spiritual path, 1, 2, 1, 2, or like the 2 wings of a single bird that complement each other, enabling the flight. However, each of these elements presents a multitude of significant nuances. That is, the practice deepens and the understanding of it deepens. What service truly means and how to channel this energy into the world also evolves and shifts over time, progressing with your practice and your ability to conduct. And your perception expands too. Your point of assemblage continues to shift further and further. Your unique individual consciousness, your spirit, accumulates more and more experience, increasingly aligning with this light, allowing more of this light to flow through it, and progressively moving closer and closer towards the Absolute. If we use, well, concepts that are understandable to the mind, it seems like some kind of linear movement, but in reality, everything is happening right here and now. Because there is neither time nor space there. But why should we talk about it now if our minds can't even imagine it? It's impractical. We need practical actions. Usually people ask, what should I do? We say, attention to the heart. For those who are sitting and listening now, your attention has already left your body. Bring it back. Questions?
Yes, there was an interesting question from a listener. You previously mentioned that individuals lacking this inner light occasionally find themselves in conflicts. They avoid conflicts. But isn't conflict needed for progress? Well, that is, you were saying that when a person lets the light through, they no longer need to be in conflict or fight with anyone here. That's it. The question is, there's a belief that progress requires conflict.
Well, look, you can answer this from 2 angles. Firstly, you are absolutely right. For there to be progress, conflict is indeed necessary. Let me reiterate how this mechanism operates. So when you are still in the process of spiritual maturation, and if you are not actively pursuing your spiritual progress, then conflicts appear in your external space, which stimulate you to seek answers. That is when suffering begins. A person might lose their health, money, and family, then sit there thinking, what's wrong with me? What have I done wrong? And in the end, I don't know, they might even go to a monastery and start searching. So that's how progress starts. Secondly, from a different angle, this is just a belief, isn't it? It's like a mental construct, the notion that conflicts are needed for progress. So that's how progress begins. We are talking about the absence of concepts in general. Concepts may or may not exist. You don't have to depend on them. We are talking about the fact that when you manage to free yourself from these certain concepts, they will stop affecting you. Previously, holy individuals, the ancient masters, typically traversed this path by enduring suffering. Meaning one had to suffer a great deal in order to become an enlightened person and be highly revered for it, But as a rule, they would say, there's no need to worship us. That's not what this is truly about. But let's not, my friends, pursue the concept that conflicts and suffering are absolutely necessary for us to even begin contemplating why we are living, what we are doing here, and what the purpose of it all is. It all ends in the cemetery. What's the point? To prevent all of that from happening, You can make this journey joyful, happy, and fulfilling, sharing it with friends and working on a common goal. My team and I are building retreat centers across the globe, organizing events such as these, and producing videos to bring this light to others, to share this message, so that you yourselves can begin radiating it out into the world. It is not possible to establish a happy communist society within a single apartment. Happiness ought to surround you everywhere. Then the external situation, the wars, the conflicts, they just start to calm down suddenly. Politicians begin to negotiate with each other. Why? Simply because there's just more of this life energy present. A notable illustration of this is the Maharishi Effect, where in the 1970s, during the Lebanese war in Israel, many teachers, physicists, doctors, and other professionals arrived and meditated. That means they were channeling this life energy, they were allowing this light to permeate the space around them, which then suddenly began to take on a structure. And they measured these statistical indicators, meaning that even the crime rate decreased, the number of car accidents went down, and I believe that even the stock market exchange rate began to grow and level out. What does that have to do with it? You'd think it's irrelevant, but this life energy decides everything. Thus, if there is simply more of it in the space is unified both inside and outside. It's just that we've divided it here with some lines. But I told you from the beginning, that's very conditional. In reality, everything is one. It's a unified field of consciousness. And when there's simply more of this energy in it, everything around becomes harmonious. But how do I get rid of the ego and the mind? I can't. All right then, let me give you one more image to consider right here. So, just watch this. The ego is just like a cocoon. Yes, we can draw it as an egg. This is the cocoon of our perceptions, our stereotypes, and our patterns. So what exactly happens? If a chick is forming within, you see it starts to tap against this inner wall. It begins to repeatedly peck at it, again and again. And then you say, what a terrible egg, what a terrible cocoon, I really don't like it. For example, I'm very shy and it gets in the way of my life. I probably need to become a bit braver. And there is this subtle self-dislike, dislike for a part of oneself. So a certain part of shyness, let's call it that, shall we? Or for instance, you might say, I am very quick-tempered, I am very hot-headed, and I simply don't accept this part of myself. I don't like myself when I'm quick-tempered, I want. And you somehow start to fight it, to suppress this whole thing inside you. And in this way, you find yourself entering into a struggle with your very own cocoon. Now observe what happens next. When you begin to struggle with yourself, you get locked inside, meaning all of this energy circulates right here inside. And it cannot break free because it's genuinely impossible to overcome oneself with this kind of self-dislike. What exactly needs to be done? It is important to grasp that this cocoon is made of your very own personality, let's call it that, your ego, correct? Your ego, your personality, it's all about the same thing. All of this has been formed in the best possible way for you. Everything accumulated over many lives, in this very life, everything invested in you by your parents and society, it means it had to unfold that way. Right now, you exist here, in this very moment, precisely as you are. And this present moment is absolutely perfect. What actions can one take to disidentify from this cocoon? You don't need to fight it because that's a subtle form of self-rejection. The energy stays inside. It doesn't go anywhere. In order for it to come out, in order for you to see that you are not it, that you are actually a kind of observer, right? Who is beyond. It turned out as if I labeled an observer, but no. It's as if you are observing it. This whole cocoon and all the space around it, to get out here. You need to stop dwelling on yourself, on your hang-ups and your fears, and instead you should direct your attention, focus your attention on serving this world. So what exactly am I transmitting at this very moment? If you are transmitting gratitude, joy, love, and happiness, then you begin to transcend your own limitations and extend help to other individuals. For instance, you have the small cocoons of your children or perhaps your parents right there beside you, don't you? And so you direct your attention to them on how to help them. Give them this strength, give them this light, give them this energy. And then you automatically shift into an observational state. These patterns and fears dissolve automatically. They don't bother you. You're not dependent on them. The mind continues to say something, to be afraid of something, but you are not dependent on it. When you approach this space in that specific manner, even if there are no other individuals around you, yes, if there are no other eggs in the basket and only one chick in this nest, then you can dedicate yourself to serving the nest. The space is entirely uniform. This division is tentative, meaning it's a living emptiness to which you simply give your loving attention. Then the inherent chemistry of the process, the physics, the quantum metaphysics, it fundamentally shifts. But what if this message, this intention to spread good by force, is blocked? Look here. So Leonid, right? Leonid is asking, what if this impulse to forcibly do good is blocked? The thing is, if you have any kind of reliance on external factors, meaning someone is blocking you or something in your surroundings is hindering you, then, consequently, you become dependent on those external circumstances. What does this tell us? We can go back to the picture I was drawing. This means we are dependent on external circumstances. So there are some external circumstances and there's this I that depends on them, and I have to fight them, defeat them, or carry them by force. No, it's not about that at all. So to begin with, we shift the point of assemblage to the observer, the witness of what's happening, because the space itself can't have any blockages. The space is unified and alive, and it only highlights your own inconsistencies and shortcomings. Where the light doesn't penetrate, remember how we previously illustrated those small circular shapes. Where the light doesn't pass through, that's where a picture appears that you might not like. Remember what I said? If I'm the smartest one, it means I'm surrounded by fools. If I want to transmit light, I have to be all good. For example, there's a certain program that declares I am very good. Yes, it's firmly embedded in my mind. Am I a good person or am I spiritual? I'm very spiritual indeed. And then the light becomes distorted by this notion that I am very good, I aspire to be good, and I desire to be appreciated. Consequently, in this external realm, opposition emerges. Ungrateful individuals who constantly undervalue all your hard work and entirely disregard you. Why is that the case? Because the light is refracted. They're showing you, look, you have some kind of hang-up about wanting to be praised all the time, for example. Do you understand how that operates? Therefore, if you come across something that displeases you, you must always remember the principle that this merely indicates the wise and living space is illuminating your own limitations. If someone in the external world appears foolish, it implies an underlying belief that I am the most intelligent. Do you understand? This is how everything operates. It's like looking into a large mirror. The external space just highlights your own flaws to you. What to do? Feel in love. 2 words. What to do with this space? You need to feel it, bring your attention fully into your body and truly love this service. Feel love, and then it becomes one single great process that you are not even doing, but is being done through you. And you are a witness to everything that is happening and can't even remember how it could be otherwise, because that would be strange.